Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Point Podcast. This is part two of the two-part MLB season preview. In part one, we went over the National League, NL Central, NL West, everything in between. NL East, of course, and in this podcast, we're going to go over the American League. The Blue Jays, the AL Central with the Tigers, Indians, what have you, and then also the AL West with the Houston Astros and everything in between. So if you join me in part one, you know how this format kind of works. I'm going to go through each division, kind of go through every team and just touch on strengths and weaknesses and where I see their team finishing up this calendar season. Like the National League, maybe even more so than the National League, the American League has a slew of have and have nots. And it's really quite staggering in baseball compared to every other sport how when you're a bad team, you're a bad team. And the thing is, I think I look at the National League East, which, we're supposed to touch on, but I'm going to anyway. I think there's some really good teams in that division that are going to miss the playoffs. Where I look at the AL Central and I think, is there a great team in this division? Somebody's got to win the division. So that's just how the cookie crumbles. Some seasons, the Cleveland Indians have been a powerhouse in the AL Central for years. We'll go over that division. There's not really a team that you look at and say that's a dominant team. You could look at the AL East. You could say there's three pretty good teams there. I wouldn't say there's an elite team, but those three teams likely could win the AL Central. So we'll go through it all, go through kind of the common themes of these divisions, and touch on something that I think a lot of teams in the American League are missing, and that's pitching. So starting with the American League East, I'll start close to home with the Toronto Blue Jays. If you follow baseball, the Toronto Blue Jays have been going through a youth movement. For years, they had Josh Donaldson, Troy Tulowitzki, David Price, Russell Martin, a slew of others, Chris Colabello, just veterans, Justin Smoke. And they made runs to 2 American League Championship Series, losing ultimately to the Royals and Indians, but nevertheless making deep runs. Since then, they had a change of GM. Alex Anthopoulos left, departed for Los Angeles briefly, and is now the GM and president of the Atlanta Braves. And then they hired Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins from the Cleveland Indians organization. Since they've departed with Martin, with Tulowitzki, with Josh Donaldson, and now it's a new team here in Toronto where they got Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who's on the horizon. They got Bo Bichette. They have Kevin Biggio. They've done a few other things, but that's the core of their team. Prior to free agency and what they've done to improve. But last year, the season was mainly about the youth movement, getting Nate Pearson, their highly touted pitching prospect, into the lineup, building a new bullpen based out of younger pitchers, and, seeing what you could do with it. So going into the offseason, the Blue Jays were actually a team that were aggressive. They spent money. They tried to get better, and, they did. Looking at what they did 2 years ago, just starting with their staff, they signed Hyun-Jin Ryu from the Los Angeles Dodgers, giving him, $80+ million. He's a great starter. Ryu is a guy that's going to give you 6 innings consistently. The one bugaboo about Ryu is he rarely goes over 6 innings. He pitched over 6 innings only once last season for the Blue Jays. He kind of has a cap where he goes 6 innings and he kind of says, check please. So Ryu, in my opinion, is a great number 2 pitcher. He's not an ace, but, an elite number 2 pitcher. He did it behind Kershaw for years, so great there. After that, the Blue Jays staff, it gets weak very quickly. Going over it, they traded for Steven Matz from the New York Mets. Matz has been a up and down pitcher during his career. He's had some arm problems the past number of seasons. Last year, he had an ERA over 10, but the Blue Jays acquire him, hoping that he can turn his career around a little bit, get health, obviously, is the main priority, come here and find his game. So they acquire him. They got Robbie Ray at the trade deadline last year. The one thing they love about Robbie Ray is a lefty. You get a lefty on the mound, it creates problems and, tough matchups for other teams. Robbie Ray is kind of a specialist for the Blue Jays, being a left-handed pitcher, and he's somebody that's, highly coveted in the organization. So Robbie Ray is another starter. Ross Stripling, he's been all over. He's pitched for the Twins. He's been a starter for the Dodgers in the past decade. He's pitched a lot in the major leagues, again, acquired last year around the trade deadline. He's a guy that's kind of a journeyman starter, but he started in this league. He's pitched pretty fair for the Dodgers. But again, another veteran guy with, I wouldn't even call him, he's a fifth starter. I think this team's full of guys that could be number 5 starters that they have plugged in, to pitch every 5th day, but they're not elite pitchers. Then the last guy slated to start, I think this is open for discussion. I will mention some other guys that they have potentially to spot start or do other things, is Tanner Roark. Tanner Roark, he pitched for the Washington Nationals for 5 years. 2 of the years he was really good. The past 3 before coming to Toronto, he was a disaster. Toronto took a chance on him, signed him to a 2-year, $24 million deal 2 summers ago. In the last year of his contract. Last season, towards the end of the year, he wasn't even on their playoff roster. He was getting skipped starts. He was a mess. One of the things Tanner Roark is actually most known for is, I don't know if you know the commentator Keith Hernandez, a former ball player, does commentating, is on an episode of Seinfeld. He said when he was pitching for the Nationals, Roark's really getting his tits lit. And that's kind of stuck with him his whole career, where when I see him on the mound, I just think, Roark's getting his tits lit. But that's happening more often than not, where he's getting the balls leaving the park when Roark's on the mound. If I'm the Toronto Blue Jays, and I think Atkins, Chaparro have done a very good job with the team by and large. I think they're addressing the pitching has been a failure. Ryu, after that, I get it that Trevor Bauer was never coming here, but that doesn't stop you from making trades. Again, I think I mentioned in the first part, Sonny Gray is a guy I think the Toronto Blue Jays could target. Luis Castillo from the Cincinnati Reds as well as a guy they need to upgrade their rotation. I think they know that, but just finding guys on, maybe some guy in a team will jump out to a hot start that's on a losing organization. They make a move for him. But having Roark as a guy that's in your rotation to start the year would scare the hell out of me. That doesn't mean Roark will start. They do have some options to make spot starts. Trent Thornton. 2 years ago, Trent Thornton made the team as a 5th starter. Now, Trent Thornton was pitching when they were in a complete rebuild. They had no expectations. He just went out there to basically fill a spot and to play a game. He had his good games. He had his really awful ones as well. I don't know where he fits in the organization because I don't see him as a reliever, but I think they'll have him in the bullpen to start the year. But he's more of a starting pitcher. He's used to going longer in games. So I assume he will start at least a few games this year for the Blue Jays. There's Julian Merriweather. He's a guy they've used in the bullpen. They do have him stretched out. I think he can go longer in games. So Merriweather is another option for the Blue Jays. If there's injuries, if there's inconsistent pitching, which I expect there will be. They were hoping Nate Pearson. That's kind of the elephant in the room here. Nate Pearson is their highly touted pitching prospect, probably the biggest prospect they have on their roster. I elevate him above Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, because pitching is so important. You can get bats. You can upgrade your bats way easier than acquire pitching. I see pitching as the equivalent of a quarterback or a strong goaltender. When you have it, you don't want to get rid of it. And Pearson has been battling injuries. They want to be a starting pitcher. He's had knee problems, back problems. He had some finger issues last year. He's on the injured list right now. He's going to miss the start of the year. But the guy has never pitched 100 innings, 100, let alone 200 in his pro career. And more, I see his injuries pop up. He's going to go through spring training where he's not going to be stretched out. So it's unlikely that they'll try to do that during the season. He's going to be in the bullpen. Maybe he'll be an opener for the team. That's a new concept in baseball where the Tampa Bay Rays really were the first to introduce it, where you put a reliever to start the game. He goes 2 or 3 innings. Then you throw your starter out there the rest of the night. Maybe Pearson can do that for a guy like Trent Thornton, and then Thornton goes 4 or 5 after that. But they do have options. Anthony Kay is another opener guy, but the Blue Jays have a young bullpen. I mentioned Dolis. They got Rafael Dolis in his second season, Jordan Romano in his second season. They're supposed to have Kirby Yates, who they acquired from San Diego, to be their closer. He had Tommy John last week, so he's done for the year. So their pitching could definitely be better. I think their starters are weak, and the bullpen is still really unproven, being so young. It could be great, it could be terrible. I'm not willing to say it's either yet, because I'm sure these pitchers are going to go through their growing pains. Some of them will have great starts to the year, and then you'll see them hit a rut. But I think it's just about, maintaining at least a sense of normalcy with this pen and giving a solid effort, game in, game out. Excuse me. That brings us to the batters. The big signing of the offseason for the Blue Jays was George Springer, playing center field, former World Series champion, former World Series MVP with the Houston Astros. One of the biggest names on the market. Huge signing, worth the money. I love it for the Blue Jays. They had Grichuk playing in center at times. They've had Jonathan Davis. And really, they haven't had an elite center fielder. And this will probably make some Blue Jays fans upset, but they haven't had one in years. Kevin Pillar was not an elite center fielder. If you watch the games, he was actually really bad at knowing where the ball was. That's why he had to do so many acrobatic catches, because he read the ball terribly. He also couldn't hit a lick, so that did not help him either. But Pillar's gone. Springer is a Gold Glove center fielder. Yeah, I think he's got a few really good years left in him. The Blue Jays got to make those count. They still got Grichuk, who's a really good outfielder, probably play right. Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Teoscar Hernandez will switch duties and left. Danny Jansen behind the plate. Again, he's a good catcher. See if he can improve on his bat. Kevin Biggio, Bo Bichette, Vladdy, of course. They signed Marcus Semien from the Oakland Athletics. He's a good versatile player. He can play all over the infield. So you got flexibility there. And really, the guy that's the most intriguing, and maybe it's just because of his physique more than anything, but Alejandro Kirk. Alejandro Kirk's a little guy. I think he's 5'5" or 5'4", little guy, but he can swing the bat. Really good hitter. He's got a big belly on him, but the guy's a catcher. I think obviously they want him to improve his physique a little bit, but the guy can just flat out hit. They're still working on him being an everyday catcher for the team, because if he was a great catcher, he would be starting game in, game out, because he got a way better bat than Danny Jansen, and he may be the best hitter on this team, including Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So he's got a ton of promise. It was announced yesterday that he's actually made the team. So I don't know what they're going to use. I don't know if he'll be the DH. They also have Rowdy Tellez, who they can put in that role. But it'll be interesting to see how Charlie Montoyo, a.k.a. Ross Atkins, because I think he calls the shots. Montoyo is just there as a centerpiece. How he operates this team, how he uses Kirk, how many times does he play Tellez at first base? How often does Vladimir Guerrero Jr. DH? How often does he play at first? So they have a lot of moving parts. You're going to have to fit a lot of guys in. And I think a lot of times it would be difficult, because they're going to want to dress the best lineup, and with the best hitters in that DH position will be one to watch. But all in all, I think their bats are really solid. I think they can be an elite hitting team, one of the best hitting teams in baseball. What worries me for the Blue Jays long-term is pitching, and pitching will beat hitting every time. And the Blue Jays could get off to a hot start, and then it fades, because you got Roark, and then you got Stripling, and then you got Steven Matz 3 days in a row, and you lose 12-10. With this starting pitching, it could happen. And that, if I'm a Blue Jays fan, that's where I think this team will compete for a playoff spot, likely get a wild card spot. But if I'm Ross Atkins, if I'm Mark Shapiro, I'm looking at pitching already, because I don't trust this staff for 1 second. Pivoting to the have-nots of this division, the Boston Red Sox. They're in a rebuild. They're trying to pivot. They moved Mookie Betts. They've moved Andrew Benintendi. They've lost a lot of their guys. Dustin Pedroia just recently retired, so they're in a state of transition. Looking at their staff, they had Eduardo Rodriguez. He missed all of last year with a heart condition. Good to see him back on the mound. He's going to be their opening day starter, so good story there. They got Garrett Richards, who used to pitch for the Angels. He's an inconsistent guy, but a veteran. They got a veteran staff full of guys that just are okay. They got Martin Perez, who's pitched for the Indians, solid 4 ERA, but he's got experience in the bigs. Nathan Eovaldi, Nathan Eovaldi pitched for the Red Sox past 3 years, pitched in Tampa before that. When he's on, he's great. One of the best, one really consistent pitcher. But he's had Tommy John twice. He's had injuries throughout his career, so you can't really trust him to be available. And the best ability is availability, and Evaldi can't give you that confidence any night. And then their last starter is Matt Andriese, and Andriese is another former Rays pitcher. They're picking him up off the scrap heap, but he's a solid pitcher. He's a good signing for the Red Sox. Um, I look at the team, and pitching-wise, it's not terrible, but it's not great. Again, they don't have an ace. I think every pitcher they have is pretty well the same. Rodriguez, if he's healthy, would be a step above. And I look at their bullpen with Colton Brewer, Matt Barnes, who's been there forever. Brazier has been there. They got Adam Ottavino off the Yankees scrap heap. Nick Pivetta from the Phillies. So it's a veteran team, a veteran pitching, which could be good. But they're a team that's still trying to figure out what they want to do. They have JD Martinez under contract for another 2 years. He's basically a DH at this point. They can play him in right field or left, but he's kind of a liability out there. So he's basically, the new Big Papi is the DH. They've got a young prospect in Arroyo that they acquired from the Giants. I'm sure he'll get some playing time this year. They got Alex Verdugo, who they acquired from the Dodgers in the Mookie Betts deal, so I'm sure he will get some looks. They still have Xander Bogaerts. Rafael Devers is a guy they want. They want him to be a superstar at third base, but he's not consistent enough to say, I trust this guy game in, game out. But we'll see what he can do. They've got Enrique Hernandez from the Dodgers, but we'll see. I see this team finishing second to last in the division, above Baltimore, but nowhere above fourth. That brings us to Baltimore. I'm not going to go long into Baltimore because they're just not worth it. This team will battle with Detroit for being one of the worst teams in baseball. Just as a reference, one of their starters to begin the year is Matt Harvey. Matt Harvey used to be a great pitcher for the New York Mets. He was known as the Dark Knight. Really, he was Showtime. And then he had Tommy John. Since then, his arm has blown up, got booted from the league, basically got a veteran minimum contract to come back. And it's probably not going to go well when Baltimore picks you up because you're over the hill. Baltimore also signed King Felix Hernandez. Now, I love King Felix. If you watch baseball, King Felix used to pitch for the Seattle Mariners. He used to hold up the K signs. He's a living legend there. But he hasn't pitched in a year and a half. He's 37 years old. Baltimore's running out guys just to fill a roster spot, just to have a body out there. And that's basically what Harvey and King Felix are going to do for this team. Their best players are Pedro Severino, who's a catcher. Again, he's not an elite player. Trey Mancini, first base, not great. Rio Ruiz. They still have Chris Davis, Freddie Galvis, veterans. But I look at this Orioles team, they're going to be really bad. And they're not fun to watch. I'm sure if you're a fan of the Blue Jays, that 4-game set against Baltimore, you hope it's in July and you hope you have a boat so you don't have to watch it, quite frankly. But we'll see what happens. But Baltimore, they've had enough. And I'm sure a lot of people have had enough of watching them, and the season hasn't even started yet. That brings us to the Tampa Bay Rays. They represented the American League in the World Series last year. But, they've had some changes. They lose Charlie Morton. I mentioned to the Atlanta Braves. They lose Blake Snell to the San Diego Padres. 2 of their 5 starting pitchers from last year's World Series team are gone. They do make some, Tyler Glasnow is effectively replacing Blake Snell. I think Kevin Cash always liked Glasnow better. Snell has always had a personality, been a little bit more rough around the edges. So I think Glasnow is more of the quote unquote company man for the Tampa Bay Rays. So they got him. They added Chris Archer, who pitched in Tampa for a long time at a high level, went to Pittsburgh in free agency, did not go well for him. Spent a few bad years there, one that was cut short by injury, and another couple where the ERA was really high. So he's coming back to his roots, hoping to find his game and maybe have another payday before his career's over. They also added, veteran Rich Hill. Rich Hill's 39 years old. Yeah, pitched with the Dodgers for a long time at a pretty high level. He's a guy that's going to throw a lot of off-speed pitches. He, I don't know how much he has left in the tank. He was okay last year in Minnesota, but definitely I look at Rich Hill compared to Charlie Morton. I'd rather have Charlie Morton, and they didn't want to spend the money on him. So I think that's a failure of the Rays. Again, they don't like spending money. They spent the least amount of money in baseball last year and made it to the World Series. So maybe they know what they're doing with Rich Hill. They also added Michael Wacha, who's pitched for the Cardinals, and he's had a mixed bag when it comes to his career. They still have a solid pen: Diego Castillo, Fairbanks, Chaz Rowe, Colin McHugh, Trevor Richards. They basically have the same. They lose Jose Alvarado, but they have the same pen that they had last year. They went to the World Series, so they know what they're doing down in Tampa Bay. And I look at their team; it's basically the same team. They have every batter they had at the World Series that they went through the rotation is back. They have Willie Adames at short. They have Mike Brousseau at third. They have Randy Rosarena in left or right. Kevin Kiermaier, their Gold Glover, in center. G-Man Choi at first. Yandy Diaz at second. Brandon Lau at second. Austin Meadows at DH. Manuel Margot. So they have the same team basically when it comes to their bats. But I look at the Rays and I say, the pitching's not as good. All their bats were really good last year. All of them are not elite players, but they all got hot at the same time. So even if they do take a little bit of a step back, it could result in them falling back into the standings. The Blue Jays are better than they were last year when it comes to hitting. I'm going to talk about the Yankees here in a second. But I think Rays, Yanks, Jays are all in the same ballpark. And we'll see. I think the Yankees probably are slightly above the rest because they have an ace pitcher and they have some other good prospects. But it's interesting to see. So pivoting to the last team in the American League East, we got the New York Yankees. They're led by $300 million man pitcher Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole was the centerpiece in Houston when they got to the World Series. He was fantastic. The Yankees give him $300 million. He's to come home to New York. And last year was a mixed bag for. I think he was okay last year. By no means was he the Garrett Cole, the Cy Young winner that we saw mow down batter after batter. I think he was solid, but again, I think there's more there to his game. So he's I'm sure they expect him to be the elite pitcher that they signed and that he'll bring it this year. They also have Domingo Germán. He's been there for a number of years. They're kind of grooming him. He looks like he'll be part of the rotation. Jordan Montgomery is still a New York Yankee. Again, he's kind of a fifth starter. You never know what you're going to get from him. Corey Kluber, they signed him. He was going to pitch in Texas last year, but he had season-ending ACL surgery, so he never got to pitch. He's coming back from that injury at 38. I don't know how that's going to go. Could be great. I think it could be great or really bad. I could see Kluber, just at his age and how many innings he's pitched, that gets injured on his first day of camp or first day on the mound, then he's gone for a month. That's kind of what's been happening to him lately. So I don't trust that he's going to be there at the end of the season. They have Davy Garcia. He's 21. He's got an outside chance of making the team because their pitching staff just isn't that deep. Again, the 21-year-old is not normally pitching in the bigs. Don't be shocked if you see Davy Garcia pitching for the New York Yankees every fifth day to at least start the season. But, they lose 3 of their starters from last year. Masahiro Tanaka left to go back to Japan. The Big Maple, James Paxton, returned to Seattle where his career started. And they lose J Happ to Minnesota. So they're without 3 starters. They still have the bulk of their lineup together. They got Gleyber Torres, who looks like a star. They have Gary Sanchez, who they hope can turn it around behind the plate. They re-signed DJ LeMahieu, one of the most consistent hitters in baseball. They have Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, who they're hoping can stay healthy. Aaron Hicks, Brett Gardner. So there's, they still got Zach Britton, Aroldis Chapman, Chad Green. So it's similar roster. Again, losing their top three of their five starters from last season. But I look at their bats and they can stay healthy. Luke Voigt's going to be on the injured list start the year. He led the American League in home runs last year. So I think they got their problems, but no team in this division is perfect. I see the Braves and the Dodgers in the other division as two really elite teams. I don't the AL NL Central. I didn't see an elite team. I don't see an elite team here, but the American League is not deep whatsoever. So any of these teams could get hot and honestly represent the AL in the World Series, because I don't think any team in the American League is as good as the Braves or the Dodgers on the other side. So it's open season. If you're a Blue Jays fan, you got to be optimistic to start the year, and then I think you also in the back of your mind got to be hoping, okay, Ross, okay, Mark, let's go add to our pitching staff and really make a push, because the Yankees can be had right now. They're better right now. They're better. We make a move or two. We had some pitching depth, or more importantly, we keep really good pitching away from them. Who knows? Maybe we can make some noise here. So we'll see what happens. Let's now pivot to the AL Central. And this division, we got a few good teams, maybe. And there's some really, really bad teams. Mentioned the Detroit Tigers. I'm going to mention the Kansas City Royals, but we'll get there. I'm going to start with the team that on paper should be the best team. And that's the Minnesota Twins. Minnesota, they got a veteran team, really veteran team. I didn't realize how veteran it was, so I started really looking it up. And you got a veteran staff. You got Jose Barrios. He's the youngest member of the staff. He's 26. He looks like he's been a solid pitcher in the bigs. Jay Happ, who they got from the Yankees, he's 38. They got Kenta Maeda, who's in the second season there, pitched a long time with the Dodgers. Solid guy, still a really good pitcher. He's 32. Michael Pineda, pitching for the Yankees for a long time as well. He's had his problems with Tommy John, can't stay healthy. He's 32, so that would worry the hell about me. Worry me. Then they also have Matt Shoemaker, who's pitched for the Blue Jays the last number of years. He's missed significant time. He's also had Tommy John in his career. He's played last year, tore his ACL last year. He missed basically all of the season. So I look at the roster and I'm like, okay, you got Jay Happ. He's old, hasn't been as good the past number of years. Barrios, okay, great. He's really the elite of the staff. Maeda, I have pretty good confidence in, but I look at Pineda and I look at Shoemaker. They're 2/3 of your staff, and they're injury-prone guys. And when Pineda isn't injured, he struggles to find the strike zone a lot, and he's bounced around the last number of years. And I look at Minnesota, and if I'm in Minnesota brass, they've been cutting salary because of the last season, but you're in a division full of really bad teams. Try to improve. Even the American League, it's winnable. It can be had by anybody that really wants to try. And I think that some of these teams are just missing the point, where if you're Minnesota, you're in this terrible division. I'm going to go over it, which is going to be painful, but I'll do it. It's you're full of have-nots. You're full of teams that are tanking, that have no interest in winning. Even you're playing the Yankees. Are they the big bad Yankees anymore? No. They're not. You shouldn't fear them. You should not fear the Toronto Blue Jays. I don't think any team does, but you shouldn't. Should you fear the Tampa Bay Rays? No. Okay, they made the World Series last year. You couldn't name 5 players on their roster. So I just think people are missing the point. Their veterans continue in their pen. Alex Colomé, former Rays closer, likely to be the closer here. He's 32. Hansel Robles pitched for the Mets for a long time. He's 30. You got Tyler Duffy, 30. Taylor Rogers, he's 30. So they got an older group, and it continues to their bats in this theme. Josh Donaldson, 35 years old, playing third, injury prone. Andrelton Simmons, 31. I actually like that signing. They got him in free agency from the Angels. He's one of the better defensive shortstops in baseball. So he solidifies that. He's going to be solid and make little to no errors for this team. And then you got your designated hitter, the veteran who's been really good for this team, and I actually think bringing him back was a smart decision. That's Nelson Cruz. Nelson Cruz, he's basically going to play DH the rest of his career, however long he wants to play. But the guy can still mash 40 home runs. And it's 162 this year, but I wouldn't be surprised you see the guy get close to 40 home runs. That's just all he's done in his career. Really consistent hitter, one of the best hitters on this roster. So I look at this team. They do have some youngsters with Kepler in center and Luis Arias at second base and Jorge Polanco at and short. But it's a veteran team. And if I look at the staff, if I look at the management, you don't have any guys that are making a ton of money. Again, Nelson Cruz took a pay cut to come back and play again. Donaldson's not making the money he once did. So you're able to shed salary and, let some players walk in free agency, but you're still got a veteran team in a really bad division. So you probably think, well, you're saving face a little bit and that you'll beat up on Kansas City and Detroit. But if I'm Minnesota and I'm management, I'm saying we could reach the World Series this year because we're in a weak – the American League is really, really weak, and I don't think enough teams are really looking at it that way. I think the Blue Jays are the same thing. Why is Tanner Roark going out in the mound every 5 days? Get somebody who can pitch. Get into the luxury tax. Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, print money. The Blue Jays, the Maple Leafs will make trades, we think. So, why aren't the Blue Jays, Rogers, stop being so fucking cheap and spend some money? But we'll see if they do it. Pivoting to the rest of this division, I mentioned it's probably going to be painful because it's some bad teams. The Kansas City Royals, they're rebuilding. They won a World Series a few years back. Since then, they fired Ned Yost. Alex Gordon retired. They still have Salvador Perez, who they recently re-signed behind the plate. So they still have their back. That's the backbone of their team, Salvador Perez. They still have some guys that they've had for a while, in Whit Merrifield, in Hunter Dozier, Carlos Santana. They recently acquired Andrew Benintendi from the Red Sox. He's trying to kind of find his career. I think that was a trade more for the Royals to say, well, we got a project now. Let's see if we can turn Benintendi around. The Red Sox believed he was going to be, a Gold Glove left fielder, bat close to 300, be a really consistent player. Just hasn't been that way in his career. But, they got another team that's full of kind of veterans. They got Mike Minor. They got Danny Duffy, Jacob Junis. So they got a core of pitchers that have pitched in the big league, to some success, some very little. But Kansas City's, they got, I think we'll look at their team. They're going to look at Carlos Hernandez. He's 24. He'll pitch this year. Prospect, good time to give him some innings and see what he can do at the major league level. But this team is veteran enough to be somewhat competitive and be better than Detroit, but not be good enough to compete with Minnesota, in my opinion, and just kind of be there, but not really be there if you catch my drift. That brings us to Detroit. Detroit sports franchises. I don't know if there's a worse situation right now. The Buffalo Bills used to kind of be that way because the Buffalo Sabres for the past decade have been a joke. And you had the Bills who are a laughingstock. But the Bills made the AFC Championship game this year. You look at what they're doing. Detroit Red Wings finished last in the NHL last year. Detroit Pistons finished third last in the NBA last year. They may finish last this year. Detroit will finish in the bottom three in the NHL this year again. You had the Detroit Lions, who are a laughingstock for years, maybe decades, of how bad the Detroit Lions have been. Now it brings you the Detroit Tigers. They were a great team for a while, made the World Series in 2012, ultimately lost. But they are the worst team in base. I say the Orioles might be better than them this year, honestly. But it's a mess in Detroit because there's still that figure who is a great player. He's a fantastic guy, going to be a Hall of Famer, one of the great hitters in the game, Miguel Cabrera. But he's past his prime. He's still making a ton of money. He's got another 2 or 3 years on his deal that's just eating at their cap, and the team sucks. So he's playing there knowing that the team's going to finish bottom 5 in the league every year, just going to collect checks, which more power to him. You signed him to the contract. He's still playing. He's fulfilling his duty, but it's got to suck for him. I imagine it sucks for him too, because he's going to a team every year knowing in spring training we have no chance in hell of winning anything, let alone division, let alone 80 games. So tough road there. The one thing for them is they'll be interested in this year is it was announced over the weekend that Casey Mize, the former number 1 overall pick, he made the opening day roster. He's going to be part of the rotation. This makes sense to me. I think teams need to do this more often. Often in baseball, high-end prospects are not slated to start the year with the team because it's a service time issue where teams can put a guy in the minors. If he's down there for a certain amount of time, then that year does not count against his bird rights and coming closer to free agency, which is greasy from organizations, but we see it all the time. The Blue Jays did it with Guerrero Jr., they did it with Bichette, they did it with Biggio, so it happens all over baseball. But Detroit's going to let the kids start the year in the major leagues, probably because they don't have any other pitchers to fill the spot. But nevertheless, they got Matt Boyd, who was acquired from the Blue Jays. Got Daniel Norris, who's acquired from the Blue Jays, who was let go. Michael Farmer. They got Jose Urania from Miami, Julio Teheran from Atlanta. So they do have some veteran pitchers, but this team is going to be really bad. I mean, you're going to have, Yamir Candelario, Nomar Mazara, Jonathan Scope playing every day. And these guys aren't everyday players, but they're going to be for the Detroit Tigers, and they will be because they're going to be losing a lot of games. So I'll be interested to see what the kid can do. Other than that, this year, there's not much reason to tune into the Detroit Tigers. That brings us to the Cleveland Indians, and they're in an interesting spot here. They still have some really good pitchers. Shane Bieber, stud pitcher. They got Aaron Savali, young guy. Logan Allen, young guy. Zach Plesac's been there a number of years. Tristan McKenzie's a 23-year-old that I think we could see make the team. They don't have Kluber anymore. They don't have Carrasco. They don't have Carlos Martinez. So they're pivoting into a younger generation. They've been shedding salary. They traded Francisco Lindor. Jason Kipnis is no longer there. Tyler Naquin has moved on. So this team that's been a playoff team forever, built on these foundational players, are out. They're moving in a different direction. And it's going to be, I wouldn't call it a rebuild, but it's a retool for sure on the fly. And they do have some good building blocks. I look at Bieber as a pitcher. I think the guy could win a Cy Young. Plesac's been a good MLB pitcher. But looking at what they still have Jose Ramirez. He's still a good player. I would say he was a superstar at one point. He's not at that level anymore, but he's still a serviceable bat, and you got to expect good things. They have Ahmed Rosario. He's another guy who can hit. Eddie Rosario and right. Fremio Reyes from San Diego. So this team likely will compete. I mentioned off the top Minnesota. Then you got the other next two teams are just terrible. I expect Cleveland. Of the teams I've named so far, I expect them to be there with the Twins. And then the team I named last could ultimately win the division just because they got a lot of potential. But I look at Cleveland as a team in transition. Two teams in the middle are dumpster fires, and you have Minnesota, who still looks like they want to compete, but they haven't done a whole lot to really convince people that they care all that much. That brings us to the Chicago White Sox. The Chicago White Sox are very similar to the Toronto Blue Jays and how they've gone down their path. It's been a slow process. They've been drafting, developing, getting really good players from the Dominican Republic from the draft, and nurturing them, getting them playing time, down in AA, single A ball. And now a lot of them are ready for the bigs. Looking at what they've done. They got Dylan Cease. He pitched at AA for 2 years. He's a good pitcher. Lucas Giolito is a guy they brought up from their system. He's been a major league pitcher for a few years now. He's a good player. They got Dallas Keuchel. They signed a free agency from Houston. He's still got some game. I like that. They acquired Lance Lynn in free agency. Not a bad pickup. They were a team that was spending in free agency, so I give them credit for that. They got Carlos Rodon, he's a homemade prospect that they've homegrown, that they've built and worked with. So he's another guy. in free agency, they signed Liam Hendricks from the Oakland Athletics. He's a free agent that they coveted. He's a good reliever. A lot of people say they overpaid him, but sometimes you got to do that to get the player. And he's now on their team. They also got Yasmani Grandal in free agency. They got Jose Abreu at first base. He won AL MVP last year. Tim Anderson, explosive guy, interesting guy, one of the best shortstops in baseball. They got Adam Eaton back after a stint in Washington. A tough blow for the team is their prospect left fielder Eloy Jimenez. He's really good bat, terrible in the field, but he sprawled over the wall trying to catch a ball in spring training, tore his pectoral muscle. He's out 5 to 6 months, so he's going to miss majority, if not all, of the season. And he's been a terrible fielder. I think they love his bat. When it comes to being consistent fielder, they don't see it yet. But he's done for the year. That's a massive blow to this team. I don't know how they're going to fill that void. But I still look at I think the White Sox are close. I think the Blue Jays are a little bit ahead of them. I like the pitching staff more of the White Sox, but I look at the bats and I say the Blue Jays have a little more there, so they're close. I like the Blue Jays bullpen a little more. Hendricks is good, but Jace Fry, Aaron Brummer, they're two guys that don't do a lot for me when it comes to having them being reliable. But in this division, I mentioned the Twins, the Indians should be there, but who says that the White Sox can't win this division? If they can get hot at the right time, they get good pitching from the likes of Rodon and Giolito the whole year, who are really their two studs. If they can give them consistent outings, I think they can make a push for the division. I think there's going to be trade deadline. I think teams are going to be reluctant. A lot of teams are going to be selling. The White Sox are in a position where they're still in the playoff hunt. Then they can try to make a move and try to acquire some good players to add to this mix and potentially go on a playoff run next year. They got new manager Tony La Russa. The guy's 76 years old, but new manager there. Interesting to see how he does with the new age and dealing with players nowadays. I think it's much different than when he was the last time he was managing a team. But we'll see how he handles it. He's had his problems in the past with DUIs and alcoholism and things like that. But 76, that'll be a funny storyline all year because I just think he's an interesting cat. We'll see what he can bring to the table. That brings us to the last division that we're going to go through for baseball in our season preview here and to the point. And that brings us to the Texas Rangers. Texas Rangers were, a playoff team playing the Blue Jays multiple years. They had guys like Elvis Andrus. They had guys like Adrian Beltre. They had Cole Hamels. They had guys that were veterans that you knew and that were, good playoff performers, but the Blue Jays always got the best of them. So since then, they departed with Cole Hamels. They departed with Elvis Andrus. Adrian Beltre retired. So Nomar Mazara has moved on to the Detroit Tigers. So this team's a lot different than it used to be. I call it a team in transition. Their staff, they got Kyle Gibson. He's a guy used to pitch in Minnesota. He's just a guy. He's a Jag, just a guy. Jordan Lyles, Mike Fulton-Weiss, who used to pitch for the Braves. He's hasn't been great in his career. So again, they got a lot of guys that just aren't great. They got a couple of youngsters that I expect we'll see pitch this year. And Brock Burke, he's 24, and then Kyle Cody, 26 years old. So I suspect we'll see those younger prospects get a look with a team that's kind of had front loaded with veterans, and we'll see what they do with their younger players as the season progresses. They still have some of their veterans. They have Rougned Odor, who is most known for punching Jose Bautista in the face. His career has taken a downturn since that punch. Batted below 215 last year. Ugly season for him. He still got the power, but he's constantly striking out, hitting in double plays. The guy, his career is really in a downturn. I think Texas would get rid of him if a team would take him right now, but there's not many suitors. They acquired Chris Davis basically just to get him out of Oakland. They didn't want him anymore. Chris Davis is sometimes a right fielder. Most of the time he's a DH, so DH for them. They do have some youngsters. Again, Anderson Tejada is a 22-year-old that we may see later in the season. I suspect that they'll use the service time to keep him down there and then call him up when he's had a sufficient amount of time in the minors. They got Eli White and Nate Lowe. So we'll see if it's the year for them to try out new things against a team in transition, try out some new guys. They have veterans to kind of fill a spot. The team was a playoff team. They got new management. They got a new thinking, and they'll be moving towards the future with guys that they hope can hit and become household names in Texas. The other thing with Texas is I mentioned in part one, they're going to have a sold out crowd for opening day. And their first home series is actually against the Toronto Blue Jays. So I don't know if I suspect that'll be another full capacity for the Blue Jay series. It'd be interesting to see how they do that in Texas and teams down south, if they can get full crowds or what Major League Baseball decides to do with that, because it can be a problem if players are leaving the bullpen. You get guys on the field or something crazy happens. So we'll see what happens there. Seattle Mariners are another team in transition where they're trying to figure out where they are. They're moving on from King Felix Hernandez. They still have Kyle Seager at third, but they're kind of moving on from him. Ichiro is long gone. So what they once were is not there anymore. They're trying to get younger. They bring back James Paxton, which I understand. He's had a tough. He left for New York to get the money. He had a tough go there. He's had most success in his career in Seattle. So he goes back to his roots. They know they're going to be very good. They bring him in just to pitch. Maybe he can refine it in his career. Not a bad signing either way. Low risk for both sides. They still have Kendall Graveman. They got Ken Giles, who's coming off a season-ending injury last year with the Blue Jays. So again, they're giving him they're giving a lot of reclamation projects this season. But the main thing to watch for Seattle is their prospects. Justice Sheffield is a fielder that has a lot of promise, got a good bat. He'll be a player to watch this year if he gets called up, if and when. He's got a lot of power, good speed, and he'll be a lot of fun to watch. So Justice Sheffield, look out for him. And there's Taylor Trammell. He's another guy that has a lot to offer for the Seattle Mariners. I don't know if and when he'll be called up because of service time and all the things I've mentioned, but this team shouldn't be that great. You want to play your youngsters, see what you have, and build towards the future. And I think Seattle will have that same thinking and looking at the roster, saying this isn't good enough. How can we improve it? And they'll do that accordingly. But Seattle bad, not going to be a great team. I don't think Texas is going to be a very good team. These next three are definitely the creme de la creme of this division, but we'll separate the three. Oakland Athletics, they're a perennial playoff team. They have been for years. They're a team that, again, doesn't spend a lot of money, but they find talent and they make it work. I look at their staff. Sean Manaea, very good starter, has thrown three no-hitters in his career. Frankie Montas, guy's proven in the league. Good starting pitcher. Again, nothing flashy that you're going to say about him, but good pitcher. Mike Fiers, another solid guy, won a World Series with the Houston Astros, a veteran, but he's going to give you every fifth day. So that's good. They got Chris Bassett, who's been there for a while. Not a bad option. So they got a decent staff. Again, no ace on the staff. I'd say Manaea is the strongest starter. Just when it comes to if it was game one of the playoffs, I think he would get the ball. But we'll see what happens. He's a guy that's had his injury problems too. So they got to hope for health. They got a veteran bullpen. They decided to go that route. They do kind of a veteran staff too, but veteran bullpen. Jake Diekman, who they got from the Texas Rangers, who pitched there for a long time. They got Adam Kolarek, who's pitched for the Rays and the Dodgers in the playoffs, a good playoff experience. They got Yusirmo Petit, who's pitched for the Rays, pitched actually for the Dodgers as well, pitched for the Twins, so playoff experience. Sergio Romo's pitching, he's pitched for the Dodgers. He won 3 World Series with the San Francisco Giants, pitching in the playoffs, a ton of experience for him. And he's got a winning pedigree. Trevor Rosenthal, former closer for the St. Louis Cardinals, trying to kind of find his careers this could be his last season in the league. We'll see what he has left in the tank. Will he be their closer potentially? And they also got Lou Trevino on the roster as well. So they go with a lot of veteran relievers. I don't mind that. Again, they got a lot of playoff experience. You had Kolarek, who in his career has actually been an opener for the Rays. They could use him in that role. Diekman's been a middle inning guy. Romo's closed in the past. So they have a lot of flexibility in what they want to do towards the end of games. And, different nights they may see a different closer. So they have good options. They acquired Elvis Andrus from the Texas Rangers. So they got him playing short now. And this team is really good defensively. They got Gold Glover Matt Chapman. They got Gold Glover Matt Olson at first base. They got, Mark Canha, Steven Piscotty. They got some good service players. But I think the strength of this team, like the Rays, is just everybody contributing. I think Matt Chapman can be a superstar in this league at third base, but they don't have a staff that blows you away, but they just get hits from guys every night. You get a chance to drive in a run, you do it on this team. It's going to be done by committee, and I think that's the key to this team being successful for so many years. Same to the Rays. They built a team. It's not individuals. You're not saying, oh, he's got to get to the plate for us to drive in runs. For this team, it's all about guys getting to the plate, doing what the role is. It could be getting a sac bunt, could be hitting a home run. It just depends on the situation and the time of game. And when it's your time to step up, they do it. And more often than not, the past couple of years in Oakland, players have done it. So I like this team to really push for the division title, definitely make the playoffs. But I could see them pushing Houston for the division title, no doubt about it. That brings us to the Los Angeles Angels. They're an interesting team in Los Angeles. They got the best player in baseball in Mike Trout, yet Mike Trout has only played in 3 playoff games in his whole career and hasn't won any of them. The guy has won multiple MVPs. He may go down as the greatest player to ever play baseball, but he never gets to the playoffs. The pitching's never good. He can only do so much. Pitching has never been good enough. His help around him has never been great. They, way back when they signed Albert Pujols from the St. Louis Cardinals. When he played in St. Louis, Albert Pujols was, a superstar. Since coming to Los Angeles, he was older when they signed him. He's never been that great in Los Angeles. He said it's going to be his last year. He's still got years left on his contract, but who knows? It could be Albert's last year in Los Angeles. But I look at the team and say, okay, how good's their pitching? Is that going to be able to hold up? It's an unproven staff. Again, they got Dylan Bundy. He pitched in Baltimore for the longest time, getting beat up. He's never looked good to me in his career. I've watched him pitch a ton. Not much to like from Dylan Bundy. Griffin Canning. Again, they've had him for a number of years. Just okay. Alex Cobb. He's bounced around. He's pitched in Minnesota. He's pitched in Tampa Bay. He's pitched for Baltimore. Now he's here. When he's healthy, he's pretty good. But again, not a lot of love there. Andrew Heaney's grew up in Los Angeles. He was drafted by this team. He stays there. That's fine. Not a bad person. They did make an ad. They went and got Jose Quintana from the Chicago Cubs. This guy's a good pitcher. He's a solid guy. Looking at their staff, he's definitely the ace of this staff. Joe Madden had him in Chicago, so I think there's a connection there. He wanted to bring him to Los Angeles, so Quintana's a good ad in free agency. But beyond that, I don't love their staff. They did make a few more moves. They got Kurt Suzuki from the Nationals. He's a strong catcher to improve that position. They got Anthony Rendon last offseason after playing for the Nationals, winning a World Series. They still got David Fletcher. They got Trout. They got Dexter Fowler from St. Louis, which that move made no sense to me because he's been long in the tooth since he was in Chicago. He had the great year in Chicago. They won the World Series. He left that offseason, went to St. Louis, and he's been a disaster ever since. So I don't understand him coming in, why he's such a guy, being a targeted guy. But nevertheless, he's here, and you got to know. And the biggest wild card for this team is Shohei Ohtani. If you don't know, Shohei Ohtani came over from Japan a few years ago, and he was known as the Japanese Babe Ruth because he could pitch and hit. Since coming to the bigs, he's had Tommy John. He hasn't been able to really play that much offense because he's had Tommy John, injuries. They're still trying to make him pitch and hit. but we haven't seen it yet. I mean, I really hope we see it. I think it would be great if he could start every fifth day. Then you see him play DH the other 4. But who knows with this guy? Is he going to be able to pitch this year? If he does pitch, is he going to be any good? It's still a project for Los Angeles. They got to rely on it because they don't have a lot of good options otherwise. But we'll see what Shohei Ohtani can bring to the table. You got to suspect he doesn't have many more options left with this team. But we'll see what Ohtani can bring to the table. And the Angels with Mike Trout, you got to hope that they can do something because, people want to see him play in the playoffs for sure. I mean, he's Mike Trout, the best player in the game. But as of right now, they don't have a whole lot of depth. And when it comes to their pitching game, when it comes to the bullpen or the starters, I put them behind Oakland. I put them behind Oakland for sure, and maybe even Houston when it comes to this team. We'll close out the preview going to the Houston Astros. They're a team that's always in the playoffs. They're a fascinating team because they're the 2017 Astros World Series, known for the cheating scandal. They're so polarizing. But that roster's changed a lot. They lose George Springer in center. That's a huge loss. They did bring back Michael Brantley, which is a good guy to bring back. But they still have Altuve. They still have Bregman, Correa, the core of their team, Yuli Gurriel. But you look at their staff. They got Zach Greinke. They keep him from the World Series team. He's a good starter. They got Lance McCullers Jr. He's a good starter. Jake Odorizzi's actually been really good for the Minnesota Twins the last number of years. He was a good signing, so I don't mind that signing. They got Framber Valdez. He was great last year in the playoffs for them. He made some starts, and he was really solid for them and gave them a chance to win. So he'll definitely be part of the rotation. Jose Urquidy is a guy that's kind of made his way into the rotation, so he'll likely start. So solid 4. I'd probably say Greinke is the guy there, but Greinke's another guy where you don't know if he's going to throw 6 or he's going to throw 2/3. He's kind of a mixed bag guy the last number of years. They got to hope he can find his game a little bit and be a little bit more consistent because he hasn't been that great as of late. When it comes to this team, I look at it and say, what's missing on this Astros team? And the bullpen for sure. I don't think it's great. I think their bats are solid, but they're missing key guys like Springer, and they're missing Garrett Cole from the World Series team. I just see the Athletics as a better team, top to bottom, than the Houston Astros. Houston's got better players, no doubt. Jose Altuve is a fantastic player. Correa, who's in the last year of his deal, is a great player. Alex Bregman, another guy who really good player. Kyle Tucker has a whole bunch of potential. Maybe Yordan Alvarez will really turn into a superstar for this team. But for them, if they're going to, they're slowly falling out of the World Series window because they don't have the pitching to win anymore. I think they still have a chance to win the division, and you get into the playoffs, anybody got a chance. But I look at their pitching and say they could improve it, and I'll be interested to see if they do. But Urquidy's a good lad. Valdez is just another guy. Again, McCullers Jr., you could say he's a better reliever than he is a starting pitcher. So we'll see what happens there. But this team is right there. Again, Oakland, Houston, and the Angels are the 3 teams that that one of them will win this division. I put the Angels 3rd right now when it comes to power rankings of these 3, and put Oakland 1. But who knows with Houston? They got the pedigree. They have the players if they're going to make the playoffs. You got Altuve, you got Bregman, guys who have been there, done that. So we could definitely see that. But we'll see what happens. It should be interesting as we get closer to the season, what these guys have left in the tank, the chemistry in Houston. If we start to see fan bases around the league, more fans come in, are fans going to heckle them? They were going to last year, then we had COVID, no fans, so we're going to see people bring in garbage cans, start hammering it. How does the Houston players react to that? I don't suspect they'll react that well because a lot of them seem really childish in their press conference last year. And, they were caught cheating and didn't really apologize for it. So we'll see. But, it should be a great season. If you're a Blue Jays fan, you get every game. My one really bugaboo with baseball, if you don't buy the package, is you get basically Blue Jays games. And yeah, it's great, I guess. But again, I don't root for a team. So I don't want to watch the Blue Jays every night. I want to watch, really good teams. But I, it's so that's my only frustration when it comes to network TV and watching baseball, where too often it's just, well, Blue Jays and Texas is on TV, so you have to throw that on. I'd like to see Houston in Oakland play, but you don't always get that opportunity. I guess you got to fork out the cash, which I might have to do, and not be such a cheapo. But we'll see. We'll see what happens this year. But that's going to bring us to the end of this two-part preview. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Season starts Thursday, so right around the corner. We'll see all the familiar players get back on the field and start doing what they do best. So we'll be covering all season here on To The Point. Hope you guys really enjoyed the episodes here today. And I'll be back tomorrow night with Seamus. But until then, everybody take care, stay safe, and we'll talk soon.